Hello, Toastmasters and non-Toastmasters who are tuning in today for our video series. This is a video series put on by District 31 called Club Close-Up. It's a video interview series where I interview clubs from District 31. We learn about their club, the great things that they're doing to engage existing members and to recruit new ones. I'm your host, Christian Austin. I am the 2023-2024 District 31 Public Relations Manager. And today we're joined by special guests from the Boston West Toastmasters Club. This is a community club, so anyone can join. Founded in 1981. Yes, they've been going over 40 years strong now. Congratulations for that. Yeah. They meet in person in Needham, Mass, and I'll provide some additional information in the show notes and at the end of the video, and we'll potentially talk about the location of the meetings and the time of the meetings at the end as well. The Boston West Toastmaster Club has had quite a year this year. For those familiar with the Distinguished Club Program, Boston West Toastmasters achieved how many points? 10 points out of a total of 10 points, achieving all of their goals for the year. Congratulations for that. Have to be commended for being able to achieve President's Distinguished status. Today, we are going to be interviewing each of the officers, not all of the officers, but the officers that we have on today in the form of a panel discussion about various aspects of the club. Each officer present today is going to be a panelist, and I, Christian Austin, will serve as your panel moderator. For those who are familiar with the Pathways Project, moderate a panel discussion, you'll be familiar with this format. We're using a fairly similar format, but we're not going to be strict on timing today. We'll keep it short, but we're not going to put that red light up if somebody goes a little over the amount of time that they have for their panel discussion role. So get your notepads out and take some notes. We're going to get some great information this evening. To begin though, I'd like to have each of the panelists give us an introduction. Starting alphabetical, I'd like to start with Pei Ying, our Vice President of Membership. Pei Ying.
Hello, my name is Pei Ying Gang. I'm an analytical chemist working for Siemens. I have been a Toastmaster for 17 years. I have served various officers' roles: president, VPM, treasurer, and a secretary. I have inspired many of my colleagues and friends to become Toastmasters. Currently, I'm a member of two clubs, Boston West Toastmaster and also Advanced Access. And I'm serving my favorite role, VPM, the second term.
Thank you, Pei Ying. Next, I'd like to introduce Carol to tell us a little about herself.
Hi, I'm Carol Latoff. I have been a member of Boston West Toastmasters for 11 and a half years. I've served a couple times as president and several of the other roles during that term. A couple years ago, I was an area director for District 31. Last year, I was a division director for District 31. And this year, I'm taking on a brand new role. I'm actually creating it myself as the District 31 official blogger. Maybe we'll talk more about that later. This year, I am just a member at Boston West, and I'm enjoying my role supporting the club in the ways that I can with my own experience, and supporting new Toastmasters to get their sea legs in our club.
Thank you for that, Carol. We hope to hear more about that blog, maybe on here, but if not on here, on the District 31 website. Moving on now, David.
Thank you, Christian. My name is David Lintz. I haven't been a member of the club quite as long as Carol. I've belonged for a year and a half now. I'm currently the treasurer. I'm also the former treasurer of the club. This is my second term in that role. I'm a former area director and a former division director. And I joined this club. One of the reasons is it's very close to my home. It's maybe 2 miles away, so it's very convenient. But beyond that, I had visited the club before, and it's always had great people and just a fun group. And I thought finally I should make the plunge and join this club, and I'm very happy I did.
Thank you, David. And last but not least, our best dressed person on the interview today, Mike Ryan.
Greetings all. I'm the immediate past president, the immediate sergeant of arms. I was a past president of Boston West Toastmasters, which I've been been a member of the club for about 17 years. So I'm brand new. It's just, I'm learning something every day. And believe me, it's harder sometimes, I think, learning some of these things than tying a bow tie. However, Boston West makes it easier. And that's what I really enjoyed about it. I have learned about Toastmasters around 2006 or so. Within 1 year, I've been a president, as I said before. Great club if you want to be engaged, professional club, a club that has humor in it, a club that has a lot of advancement for those who are or looking for or improving both communications and leadership skills. Back to you, Christian.
Thank you for that, Mike. And thank you, all of you, for the introductions about your role in the club and your role in Toastmasters in general. Now I'm going to start the panel discussion. And we're going to start the panel discussion today with an overall question about the club. And I'd like to start with my first question, inviting David back. And David, the first question I'd like to know about Boston West Toastmasters is, how do you track club success? Is it through the Distinguished Club Program? Do you have a club success plan? Please describe the process. And if not, what is your system? David.
Thank you for that question, Christian. There's a number of ways that we track success. As Carol mentioned earlier, engagement is one of the important ways to do it. But we do also take the club success plan seriously. And we became a 10-point club, as you mentioned earlier, and that doesn't happen by accident. It's something that you have to work on. I know that there's a motto in the district about members before metrics, which is a fine motto, but I also think it's a false choice. I prefer to think about it as metrics in service of members. If you can't measure what you're doing, you really don't know if you're doing a good job or not, and it's very easy to flail around. So at least for me, it was very important that we kept track of how we were doing relative to hitting the 10 points on the club success plan and actually walking into the year with a plan for how we would do it. I can't say we stuck to the plan consistently over the course of the year, but it was the North Star, something to think about. As circumstances changed, we changed the plan. And I think as President Eisenhower, I guess General Eisenhower at the time said, the plan itself is not that important. What's important is the planning process. I'm going to show up the tool that we used. If you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen for a second. This is an image of our club success plan chart from March of that year. It was before we finished it. I should give a shout out to Lori Whitmore, who actually gave me a version of this, which I've modified over the years, but she was the original source of it as far as I know. And you can see on the left-hand side, we have all the goals that need to be achieved. And for each of them, indicate when it's completed. It becomes green, and we indicate if the point has already been earned. We show how we completed it, and we showed our strategy, which again, doesn't take a lot of words to write it. A strategy, for example, on hitting a particular level is the members who you think are going to hit it. At different points in the year, we also had dates next to each person's name. Again, the commitment wasn't a blood oath that you would hit a particular goal by a certain date, but it was what you thought was realistic. If you hit it, fine. If you didn't hit it, we'd go back to the person and say, what do you think is now a realistic date? And you would consistently make those adjustments. And by January, there were a couple goals that looked like they were going to be a problem. But if you have 6 months to make an adjustment, you have a much better chance of doing it than if you have only 2 months. If in April or May you decide you want to make an adjustment, you're pretty much out in the cold. There's not much you can do. We tried to get all of our officers last year to commit to attending both a summer and winter, I listed as a TLI, not a COT, but same thing. And both years, we were able to get 6 of the 7 officers to do it, which certainly exceeded the 4 that we needed. And on administrative, we just knew it was important. We knew it wasn't that hard to hit those goals. So we picked those off. And then on membership, which I think in a lot of ways is the toughest, in the first period, we were able to get 4 new members or 5 new members, I think. And then in the second half of the year, Pei-Ying just went into high gear. So by the time we were finished, we ended up with 14 members in a year where I believe the district as a whole was contracting. So it just goes to show the importance of having an outstanding vice president of membership. So as you can see, this is stuff that I think is very important. I think it's one of the most important aspects of actually being around as a resource for the members of your club and actually providing your club with a quality experience.
Thank you for that, David. And that was quite a thorough club success plan spreadsheet mapping to the Distinguished Club program. I did have one question, and anyone else who wants to chime in as well, I invite you to add to what David said. How often do you review that spreadsheet, David?
So I have certain compulsive aspects to my nature. I'll start with that disclaimer. But certainly every time a goal was hit, I marked it. But this was sitting on my desktop on my computer. And whenever I was on my desktop, if I had a minute, I would just pull it up to try to remind me of where we are and to just make a mental calculation in my head. How much time would we need to get the next education point, for example, or how far were we away and who did we need to remind? So just having it handy that it's easy to pull up. When you have 3 minutes, you can take a look at it, and those little 3 minutes start to add up. So it's nice to have it where you can look at it on a fairly regular basis, even if every look isn't a exhaustive study of it.
Great. And you mentioned that if you had problems when you looked at it in January, there was still plenty of time to have people meet their goals. So a little bit of time each day, or maybe even each week, looking at it when people hit their goals and seeing if there's trouble ahead and being able to correct ahead of time. Great strategy, David. Does anyone else like to comment on how you're tracking club success or the spreadsheets for the club success plan that David pulled up?
I'll just comment. Something that might come before the club success plan is understanding where every member is on their Toastmasters journey. When we had the books and the CC and the CL manuals, it was easy to see where any member was along the path because we had to sign off physically. With Pathways, there's no such thing. There is an approval process. But as you may or may not be aware, sometimes the approval process gets hung up along the way. Sometimes things go awry. So you're not necessarily sure where somebody is at. What I did when I was an officer back when Pathways started was I created a gigantic spreadsheet with every member's name on it, the path they were following, and I recorded each one of the speeches and the projects. And as they completed them, I would note the date and the title of the speech so that should there ever be a question, I could go back. And I think that it's been a very useful spreadsheet for Boston West Toastmasters because it makes it easy to see who might complete a level 3 or a level 2 or a level 4, or who might get a DTM, for example, which feeds right into the DCP program.
Great, thank you for that, Carol. And that spreadsheet, and David, your spreadsheet as well, I'm asking you live here, do you think you would be able to share those if we put a link in the notes, or are those just part of the club that you wouldn't want to release?
No, I mean, the whole spirit of Toastmasters is we share our ideas so we can help improve all the clubs. If it's a tool that somebody is interested in seeing, more than happy to make it available. And I will send it to you, Christian, either after we get off this call or the first thing tomorrow morning. I'll send you a blank version for people to fill out.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. And I'll make sure to post that in the show notes as well. I think that could be tremendously helpful. That coupled with the advice that both you and Carol gave with tracking member goals. If anyone else has a comment, I can take a real quick one, 30 seconds to a minute. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next question. All right, we'll move on to the next question then. The next question now, moving from overall, although we did talk about club goals and membership a little bit in David's discussion and then just Carol's discussion about education, I want to focus now on member engagement. Carol, you mentioned that in the beginning. Can you give some specific examples of how you're keeping members engaged in the club? This could be both inside or outside the meetings. Carol, please tell us about member engagement.
Sure. Well, I think we can all agree that member engagement is the key to a successful Toastmasters club. I do see differences between in-meeting engagement and outside the meeting, and I'll start with the in-meeting engagement. The idea here is to create community. What Boston West Toastmasters does is we welcome members individually as they come through the door, the chat time before the meeting begins. We want to get to know our members, whether they're new or whether we've known them for a long time. We introduce ourselves to new members and we give hugs to our old friends. Another thing is to aim to have every member speak. Now, we have probably 30 members at this point. To have 30 members speak in a Toastmasters meeting would be a challenge. Not everybody comes every time, but we use that table topics. We can extend that to allow more people to participate in the meeting, because the more voices that a Toastmasters meeting has, the more fun it is, the more we learn, and the more engaging it is. Active participation is what drives Boston West Toastmasters' success. We also added a special role, particularly to suit the needs of our members. This happened actually some years ago, but I want to talk about it. It's called Tip Master. This is not a typical agenda role in the Toastmasters agenda, but we decided that we had a lot of new members at one point, and so we allowed this role, this person, each meeting, to offer helpful tips to deliver a speech powerfully. And the final thing about an in-meeting engagement is that we focus on, we keep evolving. You have to notice what is working in the meeting environment and what isn't. Listening keenly for the nuances of both engagement and boredom is critical. Then fix what's broken, because stagnation kills. I think a lot of smaller clubs, perhaps with 8 or 9 people, it gets repetitive. So it's important to not only retain your members, but also to engage the new ones so that they do stay and become involved. Outside the club, I also have comments about what Boston West Toastmasters does to engage and retain our members. Primarily, it's about reaching out. You do not have to be an officer to reach out to another club member. Haven't seen a member in a while? Email them. Is everything okay? We miss you. We'd love to have you do your icebreaker. We'd love to have you do your level 2, whatever it is. Show your concern. We are a community and we want them to know that they're a part of it. If you think a particular member would be a good mentor for a new Toastmaster, ask. If you try to find out what each member wants to learn or what's holding them back from participating fully. When you learn more about what's driving each member in the club, you can actually make recommendations, and we try to do that. Also, if you have open agenda roles the night before the meeting, make direct asks. It's flattering when a member is singled out for a particular role, and they will consider it seriously. It's hard to say no when someone asks you directly. So I'll just close with this quote that I think is very appropriate. Maya Angelou said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. We let our members know that they are important to our club and that we want them to succeed. Then we take actions to follow through, because engaged members renew.
Thank you so much for that, Carol. That is a key point. Engaged members renew. And I love that quote that you gave as well. Forget what people said, forget what they did, but you remember how they make you feel. And that's very important with the meeting as well. If those members are engaged, they're going to remember that feeling. They're going to want to come back to the club, remain part of the club, and spread the word around about the club as well. I did have a question for you based on what you said of evolving. I thought that was a great point that you made, especially with smaller clubs, maybe not having the bandwidth to see that they're getting stagnated. How does your club decide that maybe things are getting stale, maybe we need to mix things up, and how do you go about implementing change within the club when you see that? And that could be for anyone.
Would someone else like to take this one?
Well, I can speak to it, although Pei Ying was part of the same discussion as me, so she might add as well. This was a discussion for us at the officer meeting level about things we might want to think about doing a little differently for the club. Maybe having special meetings, having themes with meetings, which I know a number of clubs do. We typically don't, but there was some thought that that might be a good idea. There were discussions about maybe changing up the way we do evaluations on certain meetings, having multiple evaluators instead of just one. You know, not something you would do for every meeting, but for every fourth meeting, for example. And a number of other ideas were thrown out as well. I think most people who are Toastmasters tend to be adventurous enough that they want to experiment. And experiments are great. You can come up with something new and innovative you haven't thought about before, and you can have an improvement to what you're doing. You also run the risk that the experiment will fail, but you know, if the experiment fails, you've just learned one of the ways that's not going to work, and now your decision set has been cut down by one. So I believe over the course of the year, at least for our club, we're going to see some of these changes made. As Carol said, one of the great insights, I believe, of this club is there's always a way to get in a few more table topics and always a way to get more people involved. And I think particularly for newer members, although table topics are intimidating since you can't prepare ahead of time, in some ways they're easier than a prepared speech because you only have to talk for a minute or two. So I think a lot of people find this as an easy entree into the club. So at least the innovation, I'm not sure what year it went back to, of having an extended table topic session, I believe was a very successful innovation, and I believe we'll have more successes this year as we innovate further.
Thank you, David. Would anyone else want to add to membership engagements, either to what Carol spoke about or any other items that were not touched upon with membership engagement? All right.
I'll just toss in one more quick thing then on engagement. I think one of the things that we do very well is we have a lot of sources of ad hoc engagement, either a member calling a different member who hasn't been around for a while and just say, we haven't heard from you in a while, hope everything's okay, love to see you at the club again. But then something I think we're doing that might be a little different than other clubs, setting up a mentoring program is hard, and a lot of people don't want to sign up for a long-term relationship, but are willing to do something short. And a lot of people aren't willing to make the commitment. But if you have a brave prospective protege who calls a member and says, I really like how you did something, can you work with me for the next speech or two? And there have been a number of examples where that's happened in our club, and that's been very successful. And there have been a number of cases where instead of a mentoring relationship for 3 months, you go into the relationship expecting just 2 sessions or something very short. You can always build on that, but it makes the entry cost into the mentoring relationship a lot shorter than it is in what I think we often consider a typical or a standard mentoring relationship in Toastmasters.
Thanks, David. That's a great point. If the club can encourage a newer member, or maybe not even a newer member, a member that looks up to somebody else in the club, wants to learn from them as the mentor, and say, don't be shy, reach out to them. We're all here. As Carol said, we're a community and we're all here to help each other. Let them know that they can reach out to that member and ask them if they'll be their mentor. Pei Ying, was there something you wanted to comment on as well?
Oh yeah, I want to share an example. Usually evaluator is a difficult role to fill in. And recently I heard a comment from one of our new members. He felt very comfortable deliver speeches, and he gave like 1 speech a month. However, he was hesitating taking the evaluation role and said, oh, this role should be filled in by senior members such as you or other senior members like Carol or David. And the following meeting, I signed up to be his evaluator, and I showed him like how to fill in this role, and also gave him encouragement, you can do it. And afterwards, he took evaluator role several times and did a fantastic job. So this is one success story.
And that's a great point too. That is essentially a short-term mentor role with showing how about somebody that they can do it. They can be the evaluator, they can take on another role. Member doesn't necessarily need to be a long-term mentor. If they can just take that person under their wing and show them how a role is done and dispel the myth that they need to be an experienced member to be able to fulfill that role, that's a service that, Pei Ying, you said that you can do for an evaluator or any other person that's hesitant to take a role. Excellent tip. And that could be a good tip master tip for the tip master role. All right, I'd love to continue covering this, but we'll move on now to our next question. And this is for Pei Ying. I want to talk a little about recruitment. We talked about membership engagement, membership retention. The club, you guys recruited 14, that's right, 14 new members this year. Yeah, clap to that. I'm looking at your dashboard for the Distinguished Club program. I'm seeing all those check boxes. I see 4 new members and I see 10 new members after that. That's just mind-boggling. So I have to ask, our listeners probably want to know as well, what are you doing to market for members? This could be find a club, any other method that you're using. How do you connect with these members after they reach out to you? And then eventually, how do you end up converting them to become members of your club? Pei Ying.
Thank you. That's a great question. It is a great achievement. It took a village to have such a high achievement. I would like to credit all the officers' role, especially leading by Jim Wang and And also all the other officers, Carol and David and Mike, they are instrumental for helping us to achieve the high goal. And I'd like to dive into a little detail and like to make 3 points. One is swiftly respond to the online requests of the prospective guests. And everybody's in a hurry, nobody wants to wait. I find out success rate of recruitment would increase by 50% if I responded on the same day. And if I respond on the same day, it tend to engage the conversation with prospective members. And phone call is the best. If I saw a phone number, I will just take the number, start to type in a text message. Hi, how are you? This is Ben Gang. Thank you for reaching our club. And do you have a few minutes to discuss? Usually, I will be able to address more points beyond their initial inquiry. Second is open your heart. And I wrote bi-weekly invitation email to the guests on my mailing list. I share my growth journey. I said, having a Toastmaster for 17 years. I'm grateful for the positive impact Toastmaster has brought to my personal life, my workplace, and I hope you will have the positive experience in our club. People can see what's in it for them, and the guests can feel what I felt. And third is be informative and tell our club, tell guests about our club. And I especially like to mention about in our public relationship VP and webmaster Arnold. He has done fantastic job to broadcasting our club. I heard the responses from the prospective members. Your club is very active. You are doing something. We saw Open Heart to District 31, the video made by Vero interviewing David and Carol, Peter, and Mike. And those videos and show the testimony and how to be a great Toastmaster. And so those are wonderful. They really brought in energy to our club. And the other thing I want to find out or feel is do a solid work in the beginning, and then everything will be on the autopilot, and things get easier and easier. And I mentioned about tell more about our club. Like our club has been named as Club of the Year in District 31 in 2021. So, and those information help people to know about our club. So these are the 3 points: swiftly respond to the request, open our heart, and be informative.
Thank you, Pei-Ying. And a lot of great points there. A couple of points that I'd like to emphasize that you made is making a phone call. Wow. The phone does still exist, and the people communicate by talking still, not text message and email. And that just plays into your second point of open your heart. You can't open your heart through an email or through a text. It's that personal communication of somebody's voice or meeting in person that's going to engage them, as you said, and get them to the meeting. And then providing that information, your personal story, they can see themselves in you 17 years ago being that Toastmaster, something that you can't do unless you pick up the phone and you talk to somebody in person. I think that's a great point, great recruiting point. And it doesn't take any additional social media. It doesn't take a website. It just takes dialing a phone number and having interpersonal communication with somebody. So fantastic point. I'm glad that you pointed that out, Pei-Ying. Anyone else like to comment on membership recruiting? Elaborate on anything or any additional points? Carol, you're on mute. Mike, and then Mike.
I'm sorry. We also had a very, very successful open house, but David or Pei-Ying should talk about that. David led it. It was a
David,
project
I
of
was,
his.
so David, you can talk about it.
David.
We did an open house in April. We originally thought we were going to do something in the winter, but at least it was important to me, and I think other people, that we go to live meetings, which I think for a number of people who we had lost, and just talking to people, a number of people considered live as being core to the Toastmasters experience. I know everyone doesn't share that view and is happy with hybrid or just completely online, but this was something we ultimately decided to do as a club. So we were able to time our open house with the start of our in-person meetings. The open house was in early April, and our first meeting after the open house was live. And for the people at the open house, we said the venue you're sitting in today is going to be the place where we have our meetings going forward. It turns out that our police department in Needham built a beautiful community room, actually built a whole new police station, and a beautiful community room with long tables, very comfortable chairs, so you have a place to put your stuff down, plenty of room to spread out, just an ideal location to hold a meeting. And we have very gracious hosts. The police department's been terrific about it. At one point I called, I wouldn't say it was a complaint, but it was a comment that every so often we were getting over the loudspeaker something from the fire department into the room, which I suppose if you were a speaker at SealCon hearing Whitney Houston blare out during the SealCon, those speakers seemed to live with it, but we didn't want to impose that on all our speakers, and immediately said, oh yeah, no, that's no problem. There's a volume control. You can just turn it down. We'll turn it on after the meeting. So just an example of how accommodating they've been. And that actually is successful, I think, in attracting some new members, that they saw this was the club where if you wanted to be live and have the experience of speaking in front of a live audience, we were providing that. And it was a distinctive feature of our club, something that helped us stand apart from other clubs, other than some of the other wonderful things we're telling you about the club. So Pei-Ying, too modest, she helped me put it together. I actually went to her when I first had the idea of how I wanted to do it. And Pei-Ying, always very gracious, always very supportive. And she gave me the flexibility to run with it in a way that I thought would work, was gracious enough to serve on the committee that put it together. And then at the end, what really made it go was you have to have a good Toastmaster for the evening. And I can see Mike Ryan averting his gaze, but I'm not going to let him do it. Mike was our Toastmaster for the evening. I had the thought that we should script our Toastmaster a little bit because there were certain points to cover. Mike had a contrary view, which he never expressed to me. I didn't find out about that until we actually got to the meeting. But Michael off script is something that everybody should see. I mean, just gave the funniest story about how he got involved in Toastmasters with this goofy story about this job interview he had with the president of the company, insisted that he go on a hike with him, and then insisted that he join his Toastmasters club. And, you know, when you're attracting members, nobody really cares what year Ralph Smedley founded Toastmasters or how Pathways works or whatever. They want to get a feeling for the club. The same reason when you see a beer commercial, nobody talks about the quality of their beer. They show people enjoying themselves. Same thing here. And Mike just created such a spirit that this sounded like the most fun thing you could imagine. It brought in people.
And the point of in-person, it used to be the only way to do it, and now it's a minority of clubs being in-person only. That opportunity, as David, you said, to speak in front of that live audience, to practice and to feel comfortable standing in front of people and giving that speech is what draws people to your club and other in-person clubs as well. And
well, now
with
it's a choice, and it's like any other experiment. We will experiment as a district. Some will do hybrid for a while, some will do just in person, some will do purely online, and we'll see which group grows over time and which of those three categories shrinks. And we'll learn something about it. People have different preferences. It's nice that we're able to accommodate different preferences as a district.
I like the scientific method here of trying something out, getting your feedback and adapting. You said that about stagnant meetings as well and adapting. I think that's why your club has had such great success. You're not stagnant, you're dynamic, and you adjust to the times. Mike, did you have a comment? You had your hand up as well before.
Well, yes. First of all, David is just way too kind. He did a lot of excellent planning, as well as all the people involved, all the officers and even the members. One of the key things that I want to stress, though, is, and it was what a point Pei-Ying had, was that many members did not want to join or rejoin Boston West Toastmasters if we did not go live. Once the option was there, they said, no, we got to go back. We go back to where we were. You know, we have to go back to the future, that sort of thing, because the future is in speaking live in front of people and being there and active and engagement, that sort of all those sorts of things that really grew the club even more. The club has always been consistently good. I'll get into that in a later statement, but I was really amazed even at the open house, how the electricity begins again. If any club goes from virtual to live, the different feeling you get when you're speaking and walking up and doing things, it's really a rush. I'm going to just put it back to Christian, but it was quite an experience. Thank you, Christian.
I just want to make a point. I missed the open house, but I was there for the first in-person meeting. It was quite emotional. Try to recognize everyone, try to imagine, to link how we saw them virtually versus in person. I almost brought my tears down. Like, I was emotional to see everybody. It was a very touching moment.
It's like the family getting back together for that reunion after almost 3 years.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was-
it's wonderful. Yeah, I just
speaks to the community.
I want to thank David Lins tremendously for his effort to bring us live, and he has done so much work walking. Like, he probably just walked back and forth to police station more than 10 times. Just tremendous work, and our club is very grateful for what he has done.
I appreciate saying that, Pei-Ying, but as you said earlier, the fact is it's a team. I mean, we operate as a team, and that's what makes stuff work for us.
That is how all clubs succeed, is teamwork. I'm glad you are all operating so efficiently as a team. I'd love to continue to talk for hours, but we're getting close to the end of the panel discussion. Before we get into the conclusion, I just wanted to know if anyone had any additional tips or best practices for recruiting members. We went through quite a few, but if there's any other tips that anyone would like to share, now's the time. All right, we will move on then. We got enough tips already. I have a notepad full of tips. Let's move on now to the final portion of the panel discussion, our concluding question, and that I'm going to direct towards Mike. Mike, I'd like to know, this is real simple or maybe not simple to answer. Why should somebody come and visit your club?
Well, thanks, Christian. Very simply, I have been a member of the club for 17 years. It's almost like I'm in this rock band that keeps changing members, but is consistently doling out hits. I have never seen a club like this, and I have seen some 200 Toastmasters club. I've been an area director, division director, and I've seen great clubs, and there are a lot of great clubs, but this club in particular, there's something about it's almost self-branding. When someone comes, it's Zen-like. I used to use the Zen term, and that is, the strength of the wolf is the pack, and the strength of the pack is the wolf. That once you come and become a member of Toastmasters, you really go in deep in learning how to better, either develop your communications leadership skills or better develop them. And there's these people I have seen. I am amazed. I am humbled. And, as a support, 17 years, I've seen people become DTM. We have 2 here, Carol, and of course we have David, and a shout out to Carol. We watch each other's back, and of course, it sounds like teamwork and everything else, but Carol would have a spreadsheet of every single thing I do, including what color bow tie I gave at the speech. It is incredible. David will give me a phone call. Hey, Mike, you're getting lazy. You know, you're level 4. We could use the points, that sort of thing. The communication that goes on before, during, and after our meetings are incredible. And I really wish to impart this, that this team here and similar teams we've had over my 17 years, I've learned by a president, I've learned by a super entrepreneur how to get along. There's so many things that I would have to say about why Boston West Toastmasters. I just wrote some words: engaged, inspired, they're active, they're vibrant, professional, they're welcoming, they're diplomatic. The hospitality is unbelievable with people, and they're enthusiastic. They're very enthusiastic. They want people to get up and succeed. And I think that's one of the key things that I've seen over the 17 years in Boston West, how they want to succeed, and that, you know, problems are opportunities in disguise. When I saw David, you know, we were looking for a new venue, and not an easy thing, especially these days. And then choosing to go live, it's not really an easy thing at all. But I would have to say also, we just brand so darn well that so many of us become division directors, so many of us become area directors. You know, we just have a multitude of talent for so many years. It's been a wonderful trip. And it's almost like Tom Brady is like, you know, what's your best speech? And you have to say, my next. Christian?
Thanks, Mike. And there were so many points there to emphasize. I love the rock band that keeps outdoling members. That was a fantastic expression. I think that sums it up really well. The members that come in, it's not just the members though, it's the club that makes the members into those members of the rock band and makes it so successful. And the other thing I like to emphasize, you said communication. The communication is outstanding in the club. We just mentioned teamwork before. Part of teamwork is that communication amongst officers and then amongst members as well. Just to summarize our meeting today, some of the things that I heard that really stuck with me: Boston West Toastmasters, you saw those spreadsheets, you saw that tracking, the club success plan, and you wonder how they were such high achieving club. They communicate with each other, they track member goals, and then they follow up with members to make sure that they are remaining engaged and achieving those goals. So be a tip master, get them engaged, maybe have an extended table topic session, have all members speaking and being part of your meetings, and then membership recruitment. This thing, pick up that phone when somebody contacts you, talk to them, share your stories, get them to club to the meeting, realize that you were just like them at some point and Toastmasters helped you. I'd like to point out that there is going to be some additional information on how to contact the Boston West Toastmasters Club at the end of this video and also in the description. Make sure to check out that contact information. For the time being, the club meets on the 2nd and the 4th Monday of the month from 7:30 until 9 p.m. at the Needham Police Department Community Room at 99 School Street, Needham, Mass. Again, make sure if you're watching this video sometime in the future to look at that contact information and make sure they are still meeting at that location and they're meeting in person, which sounds like it's been a huge success so far. Boston West Toastmasters, Pei-Ying, Carol, David, and Mike, thank you all for joining me, and I wish you a very successful year. I know you can do even better than what you did this year and next year. Congratulations for that, and have a fantastic upcoming year.
Thank you for inviting us, Kristen.